Thank you very much. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and it was wonderful to read last night and to go to the events today and hear the interview and the craft talks. It's always my favorite part of the conference is the energy that starts to happen when the events begin to accumulate. So it's my great pleasure tonight to introduce these three poets, and I'll start with our first reader, Kim Addonizio, who is the author of 7 poetry collections, 2 novels, 2 story collections, and 2 books on writing poetry, The Poet's Companion with Dorianne Laux, and Ordinary Genius. Her poetry collection, Tell Me, was a finalist for the National Book Award. She also has 2 word music CDs, Swearing, Smoking, Drinking, and Kissing, with Susan Brown and My Black Angel, Blues Poems and Portraits, a collaboration with the woodcut artist Charles D. Jones. Her poetry has been translated into many languages, and her collections have been published in China, Spain, Mexico, Lebanon, and the UK. Awards include 2 fellowships from the NEA, a Guggenheim, 2 Pushcart Prizes, and other honors. Her latest books are a poetry collection, Mortal Trash, and the memoir, Bukowski in a Sundress, Confessions from a Writing Life, which I really, really enjoyed, and her new book of poems, Now We're Getting Somewhere, which was released in March of 2021. When I first met Kim, so that's some of the resume, but when I first met Kim at Sarah Lawrence College many years ago, I had signed up for her craft talk and reading, and to say that she was not what I expected would be an understatement. She's a poet and a person full of surprises. Her new collection has been described as sharp and irreverent, quote, an essential companion to your practice of the Finnish art of, I'm not going to pronounce this, but kasali karanit, drinking at home alone in your underwear, with no intention of going out. Imbued with the poet's characteristic precision and passion, the collection charts a hazardous course through heartache, climate change, dental work, Outlander, semiotics, and more. In these poems, I love this book, but in these poems, Kim complains tenderly in some cases, since her parents linger, quote, underground in smaller and smaller fonts, and defiantly in others, an update of Dorothy Parker's infamous resume, I hope she'll read that tonight, about the pitfalls of the aging process. But there is, throughout, a high-spirited exuberance that characterizes her poems, and even the poems about drinking alone feel less sad, less like a sad coping strategy than a celebratory part of a full life lived with all the stops pulled out. Alcohol is your emotional support animal, she writes in Among the Ways of Being Lonely. Of course it is great fun to contemplate hanging out with Kim in your underwear getting blotto and talking about poetry and Jean Rhys novels, but I wouldn't want to miss the really notable and wonderful imaginative range of Kim's work and her tremendous gift for balancing demotic and at times over-the-top language, I felt like a giraffe in a parking garage, with formal dexterity and grace. In The Art of Poetry, Kim claims that writing witty, unhinged verses is an antidote to the imperative to go out and walk around in the world like you belong there. Whatever the world out there may think, Kim Addonizio clearly belongs in here among her people, other poets and writers. Poems help us to love the world even when we can barely make out what's going on out there, she writes. Let's follow Kim's poems down nameless alleys, late at night, howling at the trash bins until a light blinks on and someone sets out a nice dish of gin. Please give a big happy festival welcome to Kim Addonizio.
So I guess I'm ready to start here. Can you guys hear me? Okay, great. Great. Welcome to all you people who we can't see. We're glad you're here. And I'm going to do a few different things. I'm going to read mostly from this latest collection, Now We're Getting Somewhere. And I'll start off with the first poem in the book, which is Night in the Castle. I'm not sure what to do about that scorpion twitching on the wall. Maybe I should slam it with this book of terrible poetry, or just read aloud to it until it dies of a histrionic metaphor bleeding out on the ancient stones in a 5-octave aria. If I get a little drunker, I might try to murder it with my sandal. I gave up on mercy a while ago. That's what happens when you live in a castle on an artist's grant. You look at the late afternoon Umbrian light smearing itself over the tomato vines and feel entitled, like an underage duchess whose husband has finally died of gout, leaving her free for more secret liaisons with the court musician. She might even have poisoned the Duke, the lecherous shit. It's hard to remember what life was like before this. And I don't want to. I want to stay here and poison the king next. I want to be a feared and beloved queen, ordering up fresh linens and beheadings, locking up bad poets in their artisanal hair shirts, torturing academics with pornographic marionette performances. Meanwhile, the scorpion is still there twitching slightly, reciting something about violence in the prison of ego. And I can hear the clashing armies on the wide lawn outside, sinking down into history and then standing up again. And this is one in sort of a blues form called Black Hour Blues. And the word black is sort of like a magnet attracting lots of filings of different meaning. And you may, you will recognize, I think, most of the references. It's kind of a naming poem, as a lot of protest poems are. The Grenfell Tower was in the UK, and so sort of substandard housing that burned, as was the ghost ship in Oakland. And that's probably all you need to know. Black Hour Blues. Nothing is the new Black's shit soundtrack. The elk's black blood leaks from the roof rack. Black the prospects of the destitute sick. Blackberries suppurate in the pie tin, green cards burnt black in the gas-lit oven, black mold loitering in the privacy of prison. Black Deepwater Horizon, pelican and dolphin. Through standing rock, a black worm crawls. Black Baltimore, Mali, Iraq, Sudan, Cambodia, Sinai, Selma, The darkling beetle raises its black back and runs through the black ghost ship and Grenfell Tower ruins. Black Syria, Somalia, Ferguson, Attica, Gaza, Yemen, Black heart weighed against an ostrich plume. Blindfolded goddess, long sword drawn, nowhere in the come down, come down. That last is a plea to Lady Justice. Let's see. I wasn't going to do this one, but it's very short, and I will do it for Lorna since she mentioned it. This is a little turn on Dorothy Parker's resume, which if I can remember, it goes: razors pain you, rivers are damp, acid stain you, and drugs cause cramp, guns aren't lawful, nooses give, gas smells awful, you might as well live. So, resume after Dorothy Parker. Families shame you, rehab's a scam, lovers drain you and don't give a damn, friends are distracted, aging stinks, you'll soon be subtracted, you might as well drink. Let's see, this is another sonnety thing. I like to write sonnety things that aren't really quite sonnets, but they're generally 14 lines with different things happening. This is one that a lot of people online seemed to connect to. It's called To the Woman Crying Uncontrollably in the Next Stall. If you ever woke in your dress at 4 a.m., ever closed your legs to someone you loved, opened them for someone you didn't, moved against a pillow in the dark, stood miserably on a beach, seaweed clinging to your ankles, paid good money for a bad haircut, backed away from a mirror that wanted to kill you, bled into the back seat for lack of a tampon. If you swam across a river under rain, sang using a dildo for a microphone, stayed up to watch the moon eat the sun entire, ripped out the stitches in your heart, because why not? If you think nothing and no one can, listen, I love you, joy is coming. And this is called Archive of Recent Uncomfortable Emotions. This haircut makes me feel ugly feeling. The however much I drink, I can't pretend it's love feeling. The strangled by the foul and ugly mists of vapors in iambic pentameter feeling. The everything I write is shit feeling. The I'm sorry I gave you those blowjobs and did you not understand the meaning of reciprocal feeling. The it's not my birthday anymore, I'm just older feeling. The looking at x-rays of my teeth feeling. The something died in your eyes and I can smell it feeling. The literary recognition might be just another shiny object feeling. The darkling I listen and right now I think it would be kind of cool to die feeling. The Keats is dead feeling. The Leonard Cohen is dead feeling. The blank and my blank are also quite dead feeling. The I am Jean Rhys getting blotto in a dismal room in Paris with black specks on the wall feeling. The maybe I'm just getting blotto feeling. The trees are no longer my friends feeling. The my friends are no longer my friends feeling. The once I was a 19th century Russian novel, but now I'm a frozen chicken entree feeling. The I can always return this feeling in the prepaid envelope provided feeling. The I am the prepaid envelope feeling. Another sonnet-like poem. This is called The Miraculous. The band starts the song over, the rhythm's still wrong, sounds that will never alchemize to music. My brother's new liver is failing. There's someone's loud lover, swearing to Christ and the bar to get sober, but the moon is being smothered by the trees and there is no ladder far enough. I go down to the mouth of the river, ugly with waste, yellow foam and trash, a tanker crawling the horizon. What does it bear? Oil or chemicals? I was taught a man could walk on water, that if I listened and unhinged my heart, I'd hear a presence stirring the air. And I do, God the murderer, making things perfectly clear. I should mention that that's a monorhyme sonnet as well. So all of the end words rhyme, which if you haven't tried it, is a really challenging and interesting exercise as a writer to try to work with monorhymes. It will teach you a lot about rhymes. I'm going to do, I think, just one or two more from this book. This is called Still Time. And I lead a retreat in Italy every couple of years, which I'm really, really lucky to do. And hopefully it's going to happen in 2022 this summer. But, you know, like everything, who knows these days. But the last time we went there, we went to the Keats Shelley House in Rome at the Spanish Steps. And it's always a magical place to go. And then we went to, well, then we had this great meal, of course, because it's Italy. And then we went to the non-Catholic cemetery where Keats is buried and read his poems over his grave. And Shelley's there also, so we read poems over his grave. And Corso's there, so we read Corso poems. So we read to the spirits of the poets. This is called Still Time. And Severn, you probably know, is the artist friend who accompanied Keats to Italy, where he was hoping to recover and didn't. Still Time. In Severn's letters, Keats is still alive, though coughing blood. One day he's better, then things look very bad, and if you stop reading, he's still lying there, calmer again and clearer, before they take his body out and burn the wallpaper. In books you fall in love with, you always slow down a few pages before the end, but then there you are, with only the back cover blurbs that say, "This story will make you cry," and maybe an outdated photo. When you photograph the famous fountain, the water stops moving, but water never really stops moving. Your plush lion swirled away. Your parents floated off. Okay, but also that wine stain on your shirt only looked permanent. After the horrifying bats in the cenote, little gold-flecked fish appeared. You finally stopped sobbing in the bathroom at weddings. You can't go back to 1821 and invent streptomycin, or stop the poet's kindly doctor from bleeding his patient. But you can climb the stairs to that room in Rome and see the flowers on the ceiling, the same ones Keats held for weeks in his fevered gaze. That's as close as you can get. Go home. Your miserable bitch of a neighbor is gone, carried out, and never to return. So that's a sort of silver lining poem, I guess. I think what I'm going to do now, just checking the time here. Yeah. Okay, so my roommate and her girlfriend are at our apartment with COVID, so I decamped to my boyfriend's house. And we started fooling around. He's a professional guitarist. So we started fooling around with some word music stuff. And we thought, maybe we can do this on Zoom for you guys. So we're going to give it a shot. They're still very much in progress, but we're going to, oh, look, and you heard me. Great. This is Danny Karen. And Danny and I are going to do 3 poems for you that we've been working on with music and words. And we'll see how this goes. And we're going to start out with one that's actually from this book that Lorna mentioned. It's called My Black Angel, Blues Poems and Portraits, and it's done with a woodcut artist, Charles Jones. And he did woodcuts of various blues musicians, and I wrote poems, and we put them together in this beautiful sort of coffee table book. You can see this is one of his woodcuts, and that's Blind Willie Johnson, which the first poem references. And actually the music Danny's going to play is also a Blind Willie Johnson tune. So we're going to start out with this, and we'll just do 3 poems. This one is called Cigar Box Banjo. Are we set? Okay. Blind Willie Johnson could coax music from a single string. God plucked a rib and found a woman. Concert aria in the gypsy song, long groan of orgasm in the first kiss, plastic bag of heroin ripening in the poppy fields. Right now, in a deep pocket of a politician's brain, a bad idea is traveling along an axle to make sure the future resembles a cobra rather than an ocarina. Still, there's hope in every cartoon bib above which a tiny, unfinished skull in its beneficence dispenses a drooling grin. The heart may be a trashy organ, but when it plucks its shiny banjo, I see blue wings in the rain. And that, of course, was not the way we rehearsed it exactly, but it's still nice to have the music. And this one, this is about an X as in EX, and that's the title, is X. Sorry, I lost it here. I had it marked. Okay. When I think about him now, I think about the money he stole from me. I remember the mice in his couch and the dying fish in his aquarium. And also feeling like a gilded royal barge was ceremoniously moving through my blood while LED snow fell theatrically in the folds of my brain. I remember thinking nothing could ruin our love, which is what everyone thinks at first. But it turns out everyone is wrong. Some things are destined to be ruined. Cheap dresses, student housing, self-esteem, romantic projections, ice sculptures of dead jazz musicians turning to mush in the rain. Some of the fish did themselves in, leaping out past the filter and over the edge. Others just flipped over and floated up and started looking kind of shredded. Mostly I think about how little I think about him now. Like he was just some decorative saltwater display in an overpriced lobby, or a hangover I sweated out in a low-impact cardio weight routine, when once he was the creature who swallowed me whole in a huge, religiously significant way. And we're going to close with this one. It actually happens to be another mono-rhyme sonnet, just in case anyone's tuning their ear to rhymes. But I wrote this after a time when I couldn't write for a long time, and went to New Mexico to see the Walter de Maria land art and spent a night there out in the middle of nowhere. And something about that 24 hours really changed my perspective. And as soon as I came home, I wrote this poem. This is High Desert, New Mexico. Temple of the rattlesnake's religion, deluge and heat surge, crush of the atom's rupture. Night blackens like a violin, and bright flower falls from the kitchens of heaven. This is where the seams begin to loosen, where you can walk for miles in any direction, rabbit, lizard, raven, insect, drone, and almost forget the shame of being human. Smoke tree, sage, not everything is broken. Horses appear at this remote cabin to stand outside and wait for you to come with a single apple. Abandon your despair, you who enter here forsaken. The wind is saying something. Listen. All right, Danny, Karen, thank you. And thank you guys for listening.
That was great, Kim. Thank you so very much. Wonderful way to get us kicked off tonight. It's now my pleasure to introduce Chard deNiord, who's our second reader tonight. Chard was born in New Haven, Connecticut, and raised in Lynchburg, Virginia. The son of a doctor, he anticipated going into the medical profession as well, until his college professors introduced him to religious studies, which he chose as his major. He graduated from Lynchburg in 1975 and went on to earn his Master's of Divinity from Yale Divinity School in 1978. Later, he left to pursue poetry, attending the Iowa Writers' Workshop, where he received his MFA in 1985. Chard has written 6 poetry collections, most recently In My Unknowing in 2019. He also authored a book of essays and interviews with renowned poets, wonderfully titled Sad Friends, Drowned Lovers, Stapled Songs, Reflections and Conversations with 20th Century American Poets, including, among others, Robert Bly, Lucille Clifton, Donald Hall, Galway Kinnell, and Maxine Kumin. If you enjoyed today's interview and the interviews that you've heard over the years at the poetry conference, you will love this book. It's like having a portable conference on your night table. You can open it up and just enjoy an interview with all these wonderful poets. His poems and essays appear in numerous journals and have appeared in the Pushcart Prize and in the Best American Poetry. He's a gifted teacher, I know from experience, but he's also co-founded a number of writing programs, including the Spirit and Letter Workshop in Pachacuaro, New Mexico, in Mexico, which he co-directed with Jacqueline Jens, and the New England College MFA program, where he served as its co-director until 2008, and the Ruth Stone Foundation, where he served as a trustee of the trust from 2010 to 2021. He's retired from teaching at Providence College during 2020, and he's now the Professor Emeritus of English and Creative Writing. He also served as the 8th Poet Laureate of Vermont from 2016 to 2019, and he serves as a board member of the Sundog Poetry Center in Vermont, as the essay editor at Plume Poetry Journal, and he lives in Vermont with his wife Liz. Chard's work is characterized by a precise attention to the things of the ordinary world, and in particular to the natural world, where observation often gives way to spiritual wisdom. So often his precise observations open from looking through or out from windows, behind a stand of trees or curtains of clouds. They aren't barriers exactly, but metaphors for the discipline that's required, for the real discernment the poet seeks. Many of his poems have a strong metaphysical feel and shape, but equally as many are playful, erotic, and gently ironic. About In My Unknowing, Carolyn Forche has written that this collection of poems is, quote, a world beheld by the spark of seeing on the border of platonic emission, a world of salt sorrow and red lust, coterminous with everything at once. Earth, Chard writes, is the only place that would do for living forever, and the force that gives life meaning is terrible, bloody, and sweet. Each of these aspects is explored in these fine and haunting spiritual but grounded poems. Varying both tone and topic, Chard carries us along on his quest for meaning. I admired so many poems. Grief is the River with a Foreign Name, Children of Aleppo, Drive-In, At the Sleep Clinic. The titles alone give a sense of the range. And I began to look for and expect that little decoder, the hermit thrush, who reappears so often, both a sign and a wonder. In The Weatherman, the poet concludes, light's such a fickle thing, but I sing for it. Won't you please join me in welcoming Chard deNiord as he sings his light to us. Welcome.
Thank you, Lorna. I'm humbled by your introduction. It's wonderful to be here and to read with Kim and Matthew. I just noticed the thermometer hit 0 here in southern Vermont, and I can feel the chill blowing under the door here. But it's really it's a beautiful season in Vermont. Since you mentioned the Weather Woman, I think I might start with that poem. I was going to start, and I'll read this other poem too. I was going to start with, but I'll start with this one called Weather Woman. A cloud spelled out a rune I couldn't read fast enough before it morphed into another form that changed again. So I recited something true enough from an ancient book. The wind blows to the north and turns, the wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes. The screen went blank and then the slip. No matter, I thought, I'll drive a truck. The clouds are codes for reading the blues, I said beneath my breath as I walked out into the rain with my umbrella, an attitude that kept me lean if unemployed. A hermit thrush reported the dusk somewhere in the woods on my way home, and I called back like a human bird who'd lost his wings. Light's such a fickle thing, but I sing for it. So the poem I was going to start with, it's a bittersweet poem, and one that I wrote just a few years ago after I retired, and COVID had just hit. It was in March of 2020. And it's sort of it's based on was inspired by a 1,000-year-old poem. You probably know this poem, all of you. Earth took of earth, earth took of earth, earth with ill, earth, other earth gave earth with a will. Earth laid earth and the earth stock still, then earth and earth had of earth its fill. 11th century poem. I wept with joy above the river. I wept with joy above the river. I wept with sorrow above the river. My tears were clear, both sweet and bitter. One leaf cried out to another, empty me today of all my color. Fill me tomorrow with a shot of sugar. This was the still ritual for my feet, to stand on the earth that took of earth, earth with ill, and sing. I was really privileged to be able to spend a lot of time with Ruth Stone at the end of her life. She lived just north of me, in Ripton, Vermont, which is also where Frost lived. And I used to visit her about once every 2 weeks for 2 years before she died in 2011. And she was a huge influence and an inspiration to me. So this poem is just sort of a history of Ruth's last days. She once asked me if I believed in heaven, and I said, not sure I do, Ruth. And she turned to me and just said this: you get what you get when you get it. So that's the first line of the poem. The widow, you get what you get when you get it, she said. When I asked her if she believed in heaven, which she didn't, but found useful to say she did in her poems for the sake of the poem, she claimed. Not heaven, but the unity of knowing and feeling the same thing Mandelbrot found in the fractal property of self-similarity, she'd say. No different at all than the properties of her poems that just came to her. She swore from across the universe and created and entered her heart, where they fanned the coal of her grief over the loss of her beloved Walter. See what you miss by being dead, she wrote to him in a poem called Curtains, as if what she called his change of means could read it still wherever he was. Her story, that is, about a crying jag she had one day when her landlord, Mr. Tempesta, yelled at her, No pets, no pets, upon discovering her cat on the windowsill, but then relented to make her stop. She was that sad and impossibly funny at the same time, so large in her voice that sang the difficult song for two voices in one, made possible by loss. The bittersweet of her coal's invisible smoke rose to her eyes and watered them, then put them out. He never even left a note, she said, just hung himself one day on his office door like a coat. The poems just come to me now from out of the blue while I'm hanging laundry or planting flowers. I never know when they're going to arrive. So if I don't run inside just then and write them down exactly as they sound, word for word, they disappear for good. Poof. I've lost most of my poems that way, some good ones too. So I'm happy to report that the house that Ruth lived in throughout most of her life up in Goshen is being restored, and it's being turned into a writer's retreat. That was her last wish. Her dying wish, really, and we have been able to achieve a lot of it. I feel wonderful that that's happened. Her granddaughter, Bianca Stone, has really spearheaded that whole venture to just to fulfill her grandmother's final wish. Then this is a poem I wrote after my wife recovered from breast cancer. Then this spring we planted again, turned the earth and pushed the seeds into the ground with our thumbs just deep enough, then covered them with the compost loam that we had cooked throughout the winter. Then buried in the loam, your auburn hair, strands and clumps of it, which you had put in the can when it was falling out in your hands. I threw it on the lawn where it glistened in the grass. Look, I said, the ground has sprouted your hair. So poetic, dear, you said. The grass can't have it all, I said. We need it too, as a souvenir. Let's leave it there, but take some too, which we did, only to notice that the hair we left in the grass was gone the following day. The wind has dawned your hair, I said, at which you laughed and then agreed, since I had reached so far beyond the pale and was reaching still. It needed it for what, I asked, the clouds, sunset, the air? But then I saw it again a few weeks later in a spruce at the edge of the yard. Those auburn strands entwined around some straw in a nest with 4 blue eggs, and the mother watching from above with small black eyes that burned right through from the other side. I'm reading from this new book, which is called In My Unknowing. After all this time, you keep writing, and this paradox occurs. The more you write, the more you realize you don't know you don't know very much, or that there's just too much to know. This poem sort of addresses that. Reception. The guests were sitting in at their tables on the lawn, when suddenly I saw them rise in a line and approach a door that opened onto a field of clover and rye. I was in awe of them, the way they stood in the shadow of the door and sipped their wine, the way they laughed and cried. I watched a Cessna hum across the sky as something that was there for a while in the form of pure idea, as something that would burn one day like a straw. I saw the endless line move along, pulling me in like a cloud, forgetting everything as they passed beneath the high dark beam of the door and were gone. So Vermont is this maple syrup country. I've written a poem to the goddess of maple, which I'll read in a minute, but I think I'll read this one first, which is called The Day. History sings misery, misery. The force that gives us meaning is terrible, bloody, and sweet. So many lenses the clock holds up to the past in shades of rose, lilac, and pansy. The wholly irrevocable scenes of things as they were, ignited, burned, mistaken. The day, as in back in. The day, as in the day we played both sides of the ball. The day, as in the day we talked to God, then wrote it down. The day, as in the day we lived offline in caves and drew on walls. The day, as in the day a pack of cigarettes cost a couple of dimes. The day as gas, the same as gas. The day as in the first, the second, the third, the last. The day as in the day we waited in line for how many hours to say to the man like Phil Levine, I want your job. The day as in the day we built enormous things with only our hands, then threw away the plans. The day as in the day no Novocaine numbed the pain and we felt it to the bone. Let's see. Here's this poem about the goddess of maple, if I can find it here. Also thought of just, you have to be bold sometimes and just think of, say, try to define something that is so common to you, so an everyday experience, but is all at the same time very strange and mysterious. And how to discover that strangeness again. So I wrote this poem called Sex Is. And it was a kind of revelation to me in a way, but I wrote it in the form of a villanelle, which helped. Sex is the nail that only drives part way, then bends, the trail of snakes across the earth. Sex is the Lord of void inside the day that turns to flesh from breath in a single day. Sex is the salve we rub into the hurt, the sweet, addictive sweat that smells like hay. Sex is the knife we use in the dark to betray our love for nothing, cut out its heart. Sex is the fire that burns all day and into the night, the prayer too easy to say. Sex is the wanted God who hides in the dirt, the master spy behind the lines, the gray, then bleeding sky on the 8th impossible day, on which we were aroused by shame to flirt. Sex is the evening wear we wear all day, the tight reptilian suit that smells like hay. This, I'm going to read just a few more poems from this book in my knowing, and then just a few new ones from from a new book that I'm working on called With a Bone in My Heart. This poem is called Vesper. I don't think I've ever read it before, so I thought I'd give it a try here. The sky is blue for reasons other than atmospheric ones. It's okay if you hear voices, she said. I might have smiled at her long ago. Language strips to its bones at evening and clatters. I sit as still as the trees at dusk and watch the birds give vanity a name that has only a sound, a kind of buzz, or is it a hum? A breeze scatters my hair that has grown over my eyes. My mother's hand, how light her fingers have grown and wide, how quiet her voice and clear. It is too easy to believe and therefore religious. A hawk spies me from above and circles the meadow below the house, where a mouse disturbs a tuft of grass at the risk of her life. A maple's leaves applaud the silence. No, they rustle in the breeze. Blueberry, raspberry, pair. I feel music playing inside me, take down its notes as a voice that sounds like mine but isn't, and lose it. The instrument is taut, hollow and old. The sky is blue because the silence is sweet because I point instead of speak, which is to say, without saying it, that I know how deafening is my voice, like all the voices that drown the music in the pit below the stage. I call my emptiness. I'll read one more from this book. Let's see. I think I will read this one. Took place in Cape Cod, Provincetown. Gerald Stern, Sappho, and Anonymous in Provincetown, June 29th, 1995. We sat on some steps of a stairway that rose to sky above Commercial Street in Provincetown. Sappho smiled like Lilith, then lit a cigarette. I said, "What is time when we're together killing ourselves?" We were waiting for the lobster pot to open across the street, so we had 20 minutes or so to talk about this and that, Emily's dog, Langston's themes, Shelley's poem, and this week's Atlantis, just where we'd left off the day before in our gossip about Markabrew, Levine, and Svetaeva. The stars gazed through the dusk like so many eyes of the dead. We grew quiet for a minute as Sappho dragged on her cigarette and I lit one up. The distillation of ocean's breeze enveloped us like a veil the gods had woven from molecules in the atmosphere, the same divinities who'd sat just where we were sitting now before they evanesced the day before to fog and clouds and birds, leaving their emptiness on the stairs, which was also their presence, Venus, Mercury, and Mars. Our cigarettes glowed like distant lamps, as if we were already in the underworld enjoying our fate with Baudelaire, Catullus, and Chatterton. What did we know about our fuel? Only that it was filling us with poems as we walked and breathed and smoked in that eternal little while, which only I and Stern remember now that Sappho's gone. That time, I call it merely to please the gods who ask for only the right details. We loafed together in that forever of waiting to enter the lobster pot, where we continued to talk some more as we cracked our shells and sucked the meat from inside the claws that fell to our plate. Well, I'm just going to read a few more poems here before turning the screen over to Matthew. I have a shirt in my closet that has a stain on it. It's a beautiful shirt and I can't get the darn stain out, but I can't throw the shirt away either. So I just leave it in there to just remind me of that I once wore it and it looked beautiful. Now I can't. Shirt. A shirt hung ruined in my closet among my other shirts, sheathed in plastic. I wore it once to a dinner with angels who were bedighted in the whitest fabric. It was a heavenly banquet until I spilled some chocolate on my collar and pocket. Keep washing, I begged the darkness inside my closet, which was the only wash that washed it. But such was life in paradise, where even the smallest spot stained the righteous, where just a thought turned nude to naked. So ruined then for dining again with the boring angels, I wore it as the latest fashion I manufactured by simply spilling in a line of garments I called original. I'm going to read two love poems. I'm hoping that everybody knows who Eloise and Abelard were. They lived in the 12th century. They were madly in love with each other. There's statues of them in Paris now that have been there for centuries, I believe. Eloise was a nun. Abelard was a theologian. He was the most famous and profound theologian of the 12th century, which was the period of courtly love. And they wrote these love letters to each other, and they had a child also named Astrolabe, which is in this poem here. They had a tragic ending, as most famous lovers do. Abelard was castrated by Eloise's uncle, and Eloise was forced to live in a nunnery for the rest of her life. But she and Abelard carried on this famous love affair, this memorable love affair for a few years before all that happened. Here, this starts with an epigraph by Eloise. It's called Eloise to Abelard, May 19th, 1115. This is an actual quote from Eloise. And if the name of wife appears more sacred and more valid, sweeter to me is ever the word friend, or if you not be ashamed, concubine or whore. Read your Planctus, brother, so I can log it in my niche. Make soft the marble floor on which the spirit springs, then sing to the friars who sleep in the yard. I'm besotted with an angel who reads both Latin and Greek. Exegete the dark of my circumference on the altar's slab where you drink and eat. Then forgive me if you can. Hold forth in your pulpit, darling, then preach your sick at known all night. Cross yourself with nothing on as you repeat, this is my body, love, take, write, conceive our little astrolabe. Abelard writes back, you swam like a snake with your head upraised. I cut a wake inside your wake until you stopped and stood in the mud. I held you in a tight embrace as if you'd break on letting go. I saw the sky for what it was, immaculate field, burial ground. A voice cried out from across the lake, Abelard, Eloise, your uncle Fulbert calling us to return right now. 1,000 minnows circled our legs like shiny badges. I couldn't speak as I gazed at you, too deep in bliss to utter a word, too damn ecstatic. We swam ashore and dressed in vain. See how I'm doing here. This time is particularly challenging for poets to write about the grief that people are feeling in light of all the profound loss that's occurred. Over 800,000 people now have died from COVID, and a lot of folks not being able to say goodbye to their loved ones in the hospital because of the contagion there. So I've imagined someone saying goodbye to his beloved from the other side here. Love's last goodbye in the time of COVID. The darkness arrived without your voice or touch, and yet I heard your voice and felt your hand in mine. Nothing in the end, not even death, can loose my grip from yours. What can I say that echoes here and beyond? Just this. You are always so contagious, dear, my hazelnut, my vast, but unlike this germ, you infected me with a love that made me better than well. That was a gift of bliss I didn't deserve. So take these words that are not mine, but the ones you gave me in the silence of this room, and I return. You were there, I tell you, you were there when I was crossing from there to here, and you are here as well right now. No absence, yours or mine, can fill itself with itself anywhere when two have loved as we did love, if only for a little time. I'm going to read one more short one here. This is in the poem. This poem is in the voice of the serpent in the Garden of Eden. One thing, one thing that I realized about the serpent in the Garden of Eden, he wasn't a serpent, he was a lizard. Because when he was cursed, he lost his legs. So he had to have been a lizard, not a serpent. I don't know why that hasn't been pointed out more often. Anyway, here it is. Here's the serpent speaking to Eve after the curse. Thank you for listening, everybody. It's been a great pleasure being here at Palm Beach Poetry Festival, only for a day or two. It's just a great event, and everybody here has been just wonderful as far as their hospitable spirit and their poems and their insights. Lizard, an exegesis as love letter. I crept out of your dream in a phallic suit, then climbed the tree I called Do Not Eat. So when you woke, there I was in my Sunday best. Oh, I should also say that the serpent really is the voice of God as well as this creature. So when he says "do not eat," that's he's speaking as the deity there. I crept out of your dream in a phallic suit, then climbed the tree I called Do Not Eat. So when you woke, there I was in my Sunday best as a funny little guy with a complex tongue and stunted legs who spoke the double truth. I lived inside your head where I hissed, for every hex there is a blessing. I doubled as Lord and Lizard, instilling dreams in you, and then my most ironic gift, a curse, which in my love for you I also chose to suffer by sacrificing my legs and eating dirt. I reified myself to wake you up in a form that belies the myth of our first talk. How could I be myself for even a second if I didn't also suffer? Every creature inspires another in me until so many exist I can't remember why or how they got their beauty from the way they hurt on earth. But you, dear heart, were the wand I hid as a rib for waving my last most human trick. This was the risk I took. Forgive me for the side effects I had. I had no choice beyond his need for you, your slow but gorgeous hunk. Beauty was never so innocent as when he awoke to find you there. This is the tale in only orthodox terms. I was that lonely in paradise when I had legs. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that beautiful reading.
Thank you, Lorna. Thank you.
Wonderful. So we're now going to conclude our evening with Matthew Olzmann. Matthew is the author of Mezzanines, which was the winner of the 2011 Kundiman Prize, and Contradictions in the Design, and a new book, which we'll talk about in a minute. But he's also been the recipient of fellowships from the Kundiman and the Kresge Foundations, and is a former poetry editor of The Collagist, an imprint of Zank Books. He's currently teaching at Dartmouth College, and by that I mean actually right now, right? I mean, this is, he was telling me last night, the miracle of modern technology is allowing him to be here, there, and everywhere. So we're happy that that can be so. He also teaches in the MFA program for writers at Warren Wilson College. About Mezzanines, his debut collection, I once wrote that it's a masterful mix of cosmic vertigo, quotidian arcana, and deadpan humor. Patrick Rosal has noted that Olzmann has, I love this description, an outsider's wit and a border crosser's vision. The materials from which he constructs his poems can be found, as befits a collagist, everywhere his eye alights, from the world of science fiction to shipwrecks and strip malls. I have the feeling that he could construct a startling and visionary poem out of whatever he finds in his kitchen drawer. A string, a tea-stained menu, an old Hallmark card. To his poems, he applies a sly inventiveness and a disarming self-awareness that allows him to get away with everything and nothing. In his villanelle Hello Earth, he writes, "A spy would understand this place, the high cost of disappearing. Let's not play nice. I enter like a secret agent, a spy, then learn your language, just to say goodbye." His second collection, Contradictions in the Design, provides the reader with admission to a series of galleries: the Gallery of Severe Head Injuries, Wreckage Gallery, and tools, ripsaw, bucksaw, hacksaw, lathe, artifacts and curiosities, skulls of mastodon and unicorn, as well as departments, myths, and conundrums. Imaginary shotguns that cause real damage, to paraphrase Marianne Moore's famous poem. With the poet as docent, we can amble through these museums, and of course museums are by definition elegiac, and in Olzmann's hands, the form is used to mourn possibilities or circumstances as well as individuals. There are all kinds of stories eaten by history and science and neglect. In Matthew's newest collection, Constellation Route, which is apparently in the bookstore and quite literally just released or about to be released from Alice James Books, I have not had the pleasure of reading it yet, but I'm super excited to do so, and I'm really eager to hear some poems I hope he will read from this tonight. I did see that in an interview he mentioned that this collection is primarily epistolary, and that's one of my favorite forms in any genre. Ever since I was a small child and read Daddy Longlegs and Dear Mr. Henshaw, I've loved this form of letter writing. So I can't wait to see how Matthew deploys that strategy in his new poems. In the interview with Nick Bertelsen published in New England Review, Matthew says, "Even though the poems have a similar approach, the subject matter is every bit as disparate as those in my earlier collection." I was really happy to hear that because I've learned a lot of super interesting stuff by reading Matthew Olzmann poems. Grief bacon, the literal German term for emotional overeating. Unconditional love without air quotes. How to inspire elevator inspectors. Dead beetles stuffed with cocaine. That's an actual poem title. And other seemingly ridiculous subjects that actually bring the reader around to a surprising emotional turn. Last time I had the honor of introducing Matthew, I called his work a cabinet of wonders. I can't wait to hear what new wonders he has in store for us tonight. Please give Matthew Olzmann a warm welcome as he concludes this first kickoff reading of the festival. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. Hello, everyone. It's good to be with you today. This poem is a letter to Bruce Wayne. A good place to hide a drop of water is a stream. A good place to hide a stream is beneath an ocean. A good place to hide a man is among thousands of other men. Watch how they rush through the city like water through a ravine. I've searched many famous cities for you. There are 3 listings for Bruce Wayne in Houston, 2 in Pittsburgh, 1 in Miami, and 1 in LA. In Tampa, Bruce Wayne is a retired chemistry teacher. In Flagstaff, he drives a taxi and hopes to procure a diamond for his soon-to-be fiancée. A good place to hide a star is a galaxy. A good place to hide a galaxy is a universe. Look at the night sky. Justice used to be a cowl and cape, the flicker of wings under an ateliated moon, and you, like a gargoyle, crouched atop some stone edifice. To conceal a universe, place it in a multiverse, that hypothetical clutch of alternate realities. The dilemma of the word alternate is how it implies a norm, a progenitor stream from which the alternate diverges. Which is the alternate? Which is right here, right now? There is no such thing as Gotham City. But here is Gotham City, and I've been so naive, believing the truth of the old mythologies, how they promised a recognizable villain, a clown with a ruby-slashed mouth, a lunatic's laugh. In the universe where I exist, supervillains look like everyone else. Give them an old flannel to wear and a square jawline to smile at the world. Suddenly they're hanging a noose in a middle school bathroom. They're shouting, "Get out of my country," from the window of a passing car. They're pulling a pistol in a crowded barroom, bus stop, or the middle of the street. They could be anyone. They could be everywhere. A good place to hide a sociopath is a full-length mirror. A good place to hide that mirror is the heart of America. In the battle of good versus evil, I was so sure good would win. Now I just hope something good will survive, get a job cutting hair or selling cars, make it home in time for dinner. I suspect there's a parallel dimension where you, dear vigilante, long for this as well. To have a normal life is victory enough. To remain anonymous and not be spat upon on the subway. In Boston, Bruce Wayne owns a pawn shop. In Milwaukee, he plays pinochle and feeds stray cats. In New Hampshire, he goes fly fishing on the Sugar River. Reels in one brook trout after another. When he removes the hook from a mouth, he might place the fish into a cooler, or he might set it back into a stream, the alternate or the original, no longer certain in which he stands. So I'm really glad to be here, and I wanted to thank Miles for inviting me, and Susan and Jennifer for driving the ship, and Marcy and her elite squadron of interns for keeping the engines running behind the scenes, and especially the intern in my workshop, Bree, who has already saved me from a few technological mishaps. And I wanted to thank the people in my workshop for being the best workshop, and thanks to the powers that be for putting me in the best workshop. Lorna mentioned that I have a new book coming out. It'll be out officially a week from Tuesday, but yes, it is in the Palm Beach Poetry Festival bookstore. So this is actually the first time I've read these poems, but this is the first time I've actually read out of this book. So thanks for watching me fumble through this thing as I try to figure out which page everything is on. This is a letter to Matthew Olzmann from the Roman Empire. 2 or 3 mornings per week, I wake up and say, dang, I'm the Roman Empire. I'm the land where Jupiter swings his mighty marble columns. Check out these temples. Check out these fine-ass aqueducts. I've got the Arch of Janus, the Arch of Titus, the Arch of Septimus Severus. What does one do with so many arches? Beats me, but 2 or 3 mornings per week, I wake up ready to conquer, ready to ride my chariot down the block. Look at these golden rims. Look at this platinum sideboard. Gaze upon this diamond-encrusted crossbar and yoke. The rest of the week, I just want to stay inside. I just want to read a book and go to bed. This happens, I reckon, to everyone. You might not understand. You might not understand now, but you will. Initially, you'll enter the world with a cry that soars like a bald eagle. The audience will applaud your first steps. You'll go to school and solve the conundrum of 2 + 2. You'll discover who Marcus Aurelius is or was. You'll get a job, smile for the cameras, subjugate a couple of promising territories. It'll be one victory lap after another. But before you know it, Visigoths scrabble the horizon, and your garage needs a new roof. You press on, govern admirably, mow the lawn, but your legions quibble and caterwaul. Your boss calls on the weekends, and some new god begins a campaign of turning water into wine in the neighbor's yard. Suddenly, you can't remember where you put your keys. Next, your praetors have all been corrupted. Pillars crack and molder. No one's been near the Colosseum in years. This is a letter to the person who, during the Q&A session after the reading, asked for career advice. The confusion you feel is not your fault. When we were younger, guidance counselors steered us toward respectable occupations. Doctor, lawyer, pharmacist, dentist. Not once did they say exorcist, snake milker, or race car helmet tester, always investment banker, IT specialist, marketing associate, never rodeo clown, never air guitar soloist, chainsaw juggler, or miniature golf windmill maker. In this country, in the year I was born, some 3.1 million other people were also born, each with their own destiny, the lines of their palms predicting an incandescent future. Were all of them supposed to be strategy consultants and commodity analysts? Water slide companies pay people to slide down water slides to evaluate their product. Somehow that's an actual job. So is the naming of nail polish colors. Were any of these presented as options? You need to follow your passion, as long as your passion is not a sestina and is definitely a hedge fund. If I could do it over, I'd suggest an entry-level position standing by a riverbank, or a middle management opportunity winding like fog through the sugar maples of New England. There's a catastrophic shortage of bagpipe players, tombstone sculptors, and tightrope walkers. When they tell you about the road ahead, they forget the quadrillion other roads. You'll know which one is yours because it fills you with astonishment or ends with you being reborn as an alpine ibex, a gravity-defying goat, able to leap 7 feet in the air, find footholds where none exist, and, without imagining it could ever be anything else, scale a vertical sheet of solid rock to find some branches, twigs, or wild berries to devour. Letter to someone living 50 years from now. Most likely you think we hated the elephant, the golden toad, the thylacine, and all variations of whale harpooned or hacked into extinction. It must seem like we sought to leave you nothing but benzene, mercury, the stomachs of seagulls rippled with jet fuel and plastic. You probably doubt we were capable of joy, but I assure you we were. We still had the night sky back then, and like our ancestors, we admired its illuminated doodles of scorpion outlines and upside-down ladles. Absolutely, there were some forests left. Absolutely, we still had some lakes. I'm saying it wasn't all lead paint and sulfur dioxide. There were bees back then, and they pollinated a euphoria of flowers so we might contemplate the great mysteries and finally ask, hey guys, what's transcendence? And then all the bees were dead. Letter beginning with 2 lines by Czesław Miłosz. You whom I could not save, listen to me. Can we agree Kevlar backpacks shouldn't be needed for children walking to school? Those same children shouldn't also require a suit of armor when standing on their front lawns, or snipers to watch their backs as they eat their lunches. They shouldn't have to stop to consider the speed of a bullet or how it might reshape their bodies. But one winter back in Detroit, I had one student who opened a door and died. It was the front door to his house, but it could have been any door, and the bullet could have written any name. The shooter was 13 years old and aiming at someone else. But the bullet doesn't care about aim. It doesn't distinguish between the innocent and the innocent. And how was the bullet supposed to know this? Child would open the door at the exact wrong moment because his friend was outside and screaming for help. Did I say I had one student who opened a door and died? That's wrong. There were many. The classroom of grief had far more seats than the classroom for math, though every student in the classroom for math could count the names of the dead. A kid opens a door, the bullet couldn't possibly know, nor could the gun, because guns don't kill people. They don't have minds to decide such things. They don't choose or have a conscience. And when a man doesn't have a conscience, we call him a psychopath. This is how we know what type of assault rifle a man can be, and how we discover the the hell that thrums inside any of them. Today, there's another shooting with dead kids everywhere. It was a school, a movie theater, a parking lot. The world is full of doors, and you, whom we could not save, may open a door and enter a meadow or a eulogy, and if the latter, you will be mourned, then buried in rhetoric. There will be monuments of legislation, little flowers made from red tape. What should we do? We'll ask. Again, the earth will close like a door above you. What should we do? And that click you hear, that's just our voices, the deadbolt of discourse sliding into place. I'm going to read a couple poems now that aren't in this book, and I was thinking about as I was trying to put this reading together. I've got this new book, and all I wanted to do was read other poems. And I know he's sort of it reminded me of a thing I heard Tom Lux say once, and I know he's sort of a legend around these parts. So I'll share this. He used to come through and read poems in Michigan fairly often. Like in the Detroit area, no poets would ever come through there, it seemed like. But Tom Lux sort of made it through there a bunch of times. And I remember he would always be reading these poems that weren't in his books. And one day he said something like, by the time a book enters the world, the poet is probably 3 books beyond that book, which sort of startled me. And I am not exactly there, but these are some poems that might be that are on the horizon. Like a dish rag, this is called like a dish rag soaked in bleach. This new pandemic or the next, or maybe some unknown future contagion might comprehensively scrub any of us from the earth, the way the waitress comprehensively wipes down the diner's counter 2 seats from me, sprays the surface with Lysol, then wipes everything again, spotless. It's late February in the first year of the virus. In a month, this place will be closed, and then next, it will no longer exist. But for now, the experts say, wash your hands, all will be fine. So if you should, coughing just once into the concern of your elbow, sit near me at this counter, then look up to say what's good. I'll say the coffee is so good, and also the cheeseburger. And you must try this vanilla milkshake. The onion rings are excellent. The jalapeno poppers exquisite. And here's the sports page, which says a guy just broke the world pole vaulting record, and that is also good. I don't want to ignore peril. I'm not trying to distract from the threat of plague, war, or famine, fate like a meteor whistling towards us. I'm just saying it's good to have lived even briefly in a time when one's vocation, one's destiny could be the use of a pole to vault over a different pole, which for me seems bizarre, though less bizarre than other sports, such as, let's say, bog snorkeling, cheese rolling, or eel pulling, which was basically tug of war with a live eel and popular in the 1800s. Any action can become a contest. Any contest is one we'll try to win. The burger I recommended, the world record for competitive burger eating, is 32 in 10 minutes flat. Man versus virus is another competition. The odds might not be in our team's favor. I don't know how much time you or I have left, or if the final buzzer is about to buzz, but I love being here on this strange planet. I love so much. Sitting here eating lunch and contemplating, while I still can, this specific strangeness, love paying the bill before returning to that strangeness, and how each time when heading for the door, always, if I turn around before exiting, always, if I look to the place where I once was, I see already the rag has rubbed the surface clean, the counter sparkles as if I were never there, nothing left but shine. And I'll leave you with this poem. Thank you for listening. This is a commencement speech delivered to a herd of walrus calves. Young walruses, we all must adapt. For example, some of your ancestors gouged the world with 4 tusks, but you can grow only 2. It's hard to say what evolution plans for your kind, but if given a choice, you should put in a request for thumbs. Anyway, congratulations. You're entering a world that's increasingly hostile and cruel, and full of people who will never take you seriously, though that'll be a mistake on their end. You are more tenacious than they know. You'll be a fierce and loyal defender of those you love. You will fight polar bears when they attack your friends, and sometimes you will win. Of course, odds always favor the polar bear, but that's not the point. The point is courage. The point is bravery. The point is you are all fighters, even when the fight in which you find yourself ensures unpleasant things will happen to you. For example, the bear will gnaw apart your skull or neck until you stop that persistent twitching. It will eat your skin, all of it, then blubber, then muscle, then the tears of your loved ones. In that order, it will savor every bite, and you will just suffer until the emptiness can wash over you. The good news is things change. For example, the environment. Climate change indeed is bad for you, but it's worse for polar bears whose conservation status is now listed as vulnerable, which is one step removed from endangered, which is one step removed from extinct, which is a synonym for hooray, none of you get eaten. I suppose this will make some people sad. Even now, they're out there posting pictures of disconsolate polar bears on melting ice floes, drifting toward a well-deserved oblivion. They'll say, we need to stop this. They'll say, we need to do something now. These people are not your friends. One cannot be on both Team Walrus and Team Polar Bear at the same time. I'm not saying these people are evil. I'm saying it's time to choose a side. I'm saying sharpen your tusks, young calves. Your enemies are devious. You need to train yourself to do what they won't expect. Use computers, invest in renewable energies, read Zbigniew Herbert. Unrelatedly, your whiskers make you appear to have mustaches, which, seeing as you're not even toddlers yet, is remarkably unsettling. Babies that look like grown men freak me out. Like those medieval paintings by so-called masters where they'd make the face of little baby Jesus look like an ancient constipated banker. If that's what God really looks like, it's no wonder we've done what we've done to the earth. Maybe you can repair what we spent lifetimes taking apart. Replace some screws, oil some hinges. This might sound impossible, but have you ever looked at yourselves? Seriously, take a quick look and tell me how a walrus face is possible. Everything about it defies the laws of physics. You will exist beyond the reach of nature. You will learn to slow your own heartbeat to preserve oxygen while diving to depths of over 900 feet. You will stay awake for up to 3 consecutive days while swimming on the open sea. And when the ocean is too rough, so terrible with longing, so ruptured with heartache, you'll find a small island of stone or ice offering refuge. It will be difficult to climb from this water, but because there's hope for us all, you will hoist yourself up, using only your front teeth to drag your body onto the shore. Thank you all.